Hey guys, I'm back with this week's to be continued episode on parenting. This is Intangible Benefits Podcast, and I'm your host, Whitney Lee Fairman Herrera. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm going to continue where I left off last week. Um, I think I might be having a little bit of technical difficulty. My producer is not here. My son, he's with his dad this week, so I'm on my own. So hopefully things come out right. But we'll see how it goes. I am a little bit technologically savvy, but this program that my son has convinced me that I need to use for this podcast, I didn't come up with it on my own. So therefore, I don't know how to use it as well as I should. So bear with me if I feel like I'm a little too closer than usual. I've tried to zoom out. I don't know, tried to move the camera back. Things are just wild. So I'm going to just go with the flow and hopefully things turn out well. And this is what we're going to do. So, anyway, I left off talking about that movie that I watched, The Girl in the Garage, and how that father was, what was he doing to his kids? Let me see. He was exasperating his children. Um, and they were starting to, I don't want to call it disrespecting him. They really weren't. They were acting like kids, but in his eyes, they and it was because he was just too strict, like, he was too petty, too out of control, and that's typical, right? Like, when you're too harsh with your kids, like, they start to rebel. Rules without reasons lead to rebellion. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but I've said that many a time. And I feel like that's true for myself, right? When I am at work and I feel like there are rules put in place that I don't quite understand, I don't necessarily rebel, but I get a little bit of an attitude, right? So like when I'm told that I need to do something and I don't quite understand why, I'm like, oh, I don't know that. I don't want to do that. Oh, I don't. So, and I feel like that's true for a lot of people. So it's true for our kids too. So we definitely want to make sure that we are treating our kids with kindness, right? And not necessarily being bullies to them. Like sometimes parents are we're our kids' first bully. And we just really need to make sure that we're treating our kids right. I don't know. I feel like sometimes parents don't see their kids as humans until they're adults or until the parent has grown in their mindset, but they were born human and they are human, right? Like from the moment that they are conceived until they die, they are human beings and they need to be treated as such. So it's important that we are respecting our kids. Um, I think I went over this last week, the ways that we exasperate our kids, unpredictable or moving boundaries, hypocrisy, conditional love on performances, um, what else? Constant criticism without praise, unfair comparisons between their brothers and sisters or other kids in the family or their friends or what have you. Yeah, we don't wanna do that with our kids, right? And I think I said last week, like, if we're comparing our kids to their siblings. Oh, I think my niece just walked in. "Hey, Matt, I'm recording the pod." It's all good. So I think when we compare our kids to each other, it says a lot about what kind of parents we are, more so than it says about the kids. Like, if we've raised one kid to be this way and another kid to be this way where we feel like we can compare them, we failed one of the kids, right? Like, if we think one kid is better than the other, then we didn't do something right with the kid that we think is not so good. So let's just not compare the kids. But I wanted to move on, and I wanted to move on to Colossians chapter 3, verse 21, where it says, "Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged." And we can change fathers to parents because mothers can embitter their children too. I see it firsthand in my own life with my husband, for example, with his mom. He has had a hard relationship with his mom growing up, and I won't tell his business and I'll leave it at that. But I've seen that too with mothers. So we won't just say fathers, but we'll say parents. Um, so I did some research, like, what does it mean? Like, what does embittering your children look like? And yeah, I mean, treating them harshly, yeah, that is embittering them, um, for sure, right? But I think like be over all over the internet and like in real life, people who never met their dad or met their mom, um, parents who've abandoned their kids, that causes their kids to feel embittered. And that definitely makes their kids feel discouraged. So like that abandoning your kids feel discouraged 100% or coming around, but not as much as you need to be around, embitters your kids, discourages them. Um, we wanna be there for our kids. If we made a baby, we need to be there for the baby. We definitely don't want to be out here creating children that we don't intend to raise, creating children that we don't intend to love. That's a disgrace in my opinion, my humble opinion. If we make a baby, we gotta love that baby, and we gotta raise that baby to the very best of our ability, and if our abilities are low, then we need to get better ability so that we can do our best by that child, so that they have a shot in the world, right? We don't wanna give our kids the lowest possible start, we wanna give our kids the best possible start. So if we are at a low place in the world, we need to up our place so that their starting place can be higher than our starting place was even at the time that they were born. I say for myself, when I got pregnant with my oldest son, I was in college and I didn't quit. I got pregnant. I started college in January. I got pregnant in June. Went to school throughout my pregnancy. I had a C-section 1 week. The next week, I was back in school and I went all the way up until I finished. And my 2-year-old son was at my graduation. And, you don't quit. You don't quit because I needed that degree. I didn't use it. I ended up getting married shortly after I graduated from college, and I was a stay-at-home mom for quite a while. But that degree paid off because I was able to pursue a career as a teacher because I got that degree, and I pursued that career while I was getting a divorce, and that is a career that allowed me to sustain while I was divorcing and through single motherhood. So, I say all of that to say, you don't quit even when things get difficult so that you can give your kids the best possible life, the best possible childhood. You don't quit on your kids. You don't tell your kids, "I can't do it, so you can't do it." You give your kids everything that you have, right? We become our best selves so that they can be their best selves. So, the last thing that we wanna do is abandon our kids so that they can feel embittered and discouraged. We want our kids to live happy lives, so that they can then too raise happy children. Um, 2nd verse, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So this is a thing that I see a lot too, like, in as a teacher, children are going very undisciplined. Kids do not want to do anything that is difficult, and parents don't wanna make them do it, and that is crazy to me. Yeah, it's hard, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to make my sons stay with it, stick with it, work hard, clean the rooms, do their homework, read that book for the AR points. It's hard, right? Like, because that means that we have to be disciplined. If the kids have to be disciplined, we have to be disciplined because we gotta make the kids be disciplined, and we have to check ourselves, and we're tired, we go to work, maybe we're in school, we have things that we have to do, gotta cook dinner, gotta exercise, gotta remember the appointments, gotta take them to the doctor, gotta take them to the extracurricular activities, it's a lot, but that's the discipline that we need to instill in our children so that they can be competent adults who are disciplined, who can sustain their own lives as adults, who can build their future so that they can be successful however they define success. I'm not even talking about money. I'm just talking about capable of being adults who get things done, who are thriving, who don't just quit, who aren't just living in your garage or in your extra bedroom until they're 40 years old. We don't want that. We want our kids to do what they have to do, grow into adulthood, spread their wings, fly, and then live their own lives and bring you into their lives as a spectator rather than a dictator. Let's just leave it at that, right? We don't want to dictate our children's lives as adults because they don't have the competency to do so themselves. We want to watch them live their lives and make their own choices and make the correct choices for themselves. Um, so I told you guys the last episode that my son failed his driver's test, and we had been practicing a lot. Like that boy knows how to drive. And, he's been driving on the freeway, he's been parking, he's been driving on the street, he's been doing all the things, parking in the garage with a second car next to it. He's been doing all the things. And, like, but he is hard-headed, if I'm honest. Like, he don't wanna take my advice sometimes. And because of that, I believe he failed the test. Like, the things that the driver instructor told him are the very things that I told him. Like, "Son, you gotta stop smoother. You've gotta, you know, stop all the way. You gotta look over your shoulder when you change lanes. You gotta turn on your signal every time. You gotta do these things. You're an inexperienced driver. Like, yes, you've learned how to operate a motor vehicle, but you're still inexperienced and you can crash, and crashing could result in loss of life for you or somebody else. And we don't need that we don't need that. I need my son to outlive me and, a car crash could take your life or somebody else's life very quickly, and we don't need that. So it's very important that you take what I'm saying to you very seriously. So in that, like he would think that I was tripping, like, Mom, I'm doing that. I'm doing, how teenagers are. They don't believe anything you say, even though you've lived twice as long as them. So, you know, he failed the test and, that's a part of life. He was sad too at first, and I had to go to the car and cheer him up, like not cheer him up like, "Oh," I would never tell him, "Oh, that driving teacher didn't know what she was talking about," because that's what he tried to convince me of, like, "I did everything she said." Obviously not, because you failed. So I'm not the kind of mom that would tell my son like, "Oh, she didn't know what she was talking about." I never take the kid's side. Right? I don't ever take the kid's side. There was one incident at school where I had to take my son's side because the teacher really was actually wrong, but that was it, and that was like an extreme situation. But otherwise, um, nah, you didn't practice enough. You didn't do what you were supposed to do, and, like, that's it. And I feel like that's a part of that painful discipline, and, you know on the other side of that painful discipline produces that harvest, like Hebrews 12 and 11 says. It produces a harvest of righteousness. So once my son realizes that that hardship that came with failing that driver's test, he's going to be a better driver in the end. I failed my driver's test the first time, and I think I'm supreme when it comes to driving. And, you can't tell me any different because I never caused a car accident. I haven't had a car accident, knock on wood. I haven't had a car accident, and many years, and the one that I did have, it was not my fault. So, I tell my husband that for me, driving is like walking. The car is an extension of my body. That's how comfortable I feel behind the wheel. And I feel like that says a lot. But I did fail my first driver's test. So I'm hoping that this is a learning lesson for my son, that he will recognize that just because you learned how to do something doesn't mean that you can't fail your test because you can. So anyway, um, fathers, Psalm 103 verse 13 says that you should have compassion for your children. I agree. My husband and I have conversations often that talk about having sons versus having daughters. We had our first daughter in April, and he's just putty in that girl's hands. Like he loves her so much, and he always asks, like, I wonder if I would feel the same um if she were a boy. Like, I would hope so, because why wouldn't you? Like, your child is your child is your child. Like, you don't wanna treat your son like you love him less just because he's a male. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, wouldn't you want your son to be able to love and be loved just as much as your daughter? That they learn that from you. They learn that from me. So, like we have to treat our kids like we love them regardless, and it's very important that we show our kids compassion because where are they going to learn how to be compassionate people? From us, right? Um and my favorite part, Psalm 127, verses 3 through 5 says, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with opponents in court. So when I first read this verse, I was like, what is heritage? Like, I know what heritage is when I think about the word, like heritage. Okay, whatever, like things that come from generation to that are passed down. Yes, get that. In Hebrew, it's nakala. That's how you pronounce the word, or that's how you say the word heritage in Hebrew, nakala. I'm hoping that I'm saying that right. That's what I gathered from my research. So nakala is something inherited or an heirloom. So heritage is something entrusted to a steward. A steward is a manager, right? So a heritage is something that you trust to be managed by somebody. So parents don't necessarily own their children. Um, they come from God, and God trusts us to care for them and raise them well in the instruction of the Lord. So verse 4 says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. So when I think of arrows, arrows are really straight and they're sharp. How do they get straight and sharp? Well, arrows require intentional shaping, just like children, right? You don't just grab any old stick and call it an arrow. A stick is a stick and an arrow is an arrow. Arrows require to be straight, like I said. They need to be sharp so that they can fly through whatever it is that they're trying the target is, right? They can't shape themselves, right? You don't pick, like I just said, you don't pick up any old stick and call it an arrow. It has to be shaped into an arrow. It has to be made with intention. Like a child, you have to be intentional with your children. You can't simply just have kids and hope that they come out well. And I think that's true with any kind of relationship that you have, but especially with children because they're with sponges and they soak up whatever it is and that the environment gives them. Arrows are meant to be launched, right? Like bow and arrow. Have you guys ever shot a bow and arrow? Have you ever done archery? My husband and I have gone on a date where we've done archery. And you have your bow, you have your arrow, pull it back, you let it go. So they're meant to be launched at a target. You don't keep the arrows in a quiver forever. The ultimate purpose is to be aimed and released into the world far beyond where the archer can reach, right? So they fly through the air beyond where the person who is shooting the arrow can reach. They reach a target that is far beyond where the archer is going. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Children born in youth, raising kids. So what verse was that? I'm gonna say that's verse 5. Children born in youth, so raising kids while young meant that parents grew older. As parents grew older, their children would be strong adults capable of supporting and caring for and protecting the family unit. So, as you get older, you care for your parents, like you take them to the doctor, you go into the doctor's appointments potentially, and you hear what the doctor has to say. Maybe your parents don't necessarily understand all the things that the doctor is saying. So you're like helping the parent understand what's going on, how to take their medicine. You take them to the pharmacy. Maybe you make their meals for them. You order whatever supplies they might need to stay well, caring for an aging parent. And that was verse 4. So verse 5, blessed is the man who is full of them. So when an elderly people have strong, capable adult children, because you shape them like an arrow with intention, on their side, they are protected and cared for. So I remember a time where I had to take my mom to AAA to do some DMV business. You know how you can do like DMV tags and stuff at AAA. So I took her there, and the lady that was working that part of AAA was really rude to my mom. And like, hold up. Why are you talking to my mom like that? And she straightened up real quick, like, she's got a young whippersnapper with her, and you're not about to talk to my mom like that. She's simply here trying to get her business done, and she don't need to be disrespected by you simply because you're having a bad day. And those kinds of things are necessary sometimes when you're with your parent or when you're with your kid, right? Or when you're with your husband. Like, people be trying to test your gangster when you're with your people. And when you're young and competent and capable, because your parents shaped you in such a way, you're able to protect the people that you love. So that is why it is so important to raise your kids right, so that they are young and competent and capable, so that they can protect the people that they love, so that they can protect themselves, so that they can have that hedge of protection around them and not be conned, not be tricked, and to recognize when that's happening to the people that they care about too. Recognize when it's happening to you. So it's important that we raise our kids well. Very important that we love our kids well. It's very important that we recognize that raising kids is so much more than feeding, clothing, and housing them. Like, I get that times we have kids really young, and we don't always recognize that there's so much more to it than the essentials. But let me just tell you that if you are a young parent, get your life together quickly if it's not there yet, so that you can get further ahead, so that your child can have a further head start. You know what I mean? You don't want to be barely waking up in your late 30s or 40s, finally recognizing that your kid is going to be an adult one day, and it's your job to make sure that they have a successful launch. I'm telling you this because I was 33 when I finally got my career. And while I knew that I wanted my kids to grow up to live a certain kind of way, so I started preparing their hearts for the Lord. Or, and like I got saved when I was pregnant with my first son. So I have been giving them instruction, godly instruction their whole lives. But even still, there was so much more like prepping that I needed to do. Like, yes, I wanted my kids to love the Lord, but I had to actually train them up in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I had been doing that, but then the financial piece was a thing. And, like, all of that, the wisdom piece was a thing, choosing friends was a thing, choosing partners is a thing. All of those things matter, but if I don't know how to do those things myself, I can't teach anyone anything. So wise up quickly so that you can pass it to your children. All right, y'all. I'm going to leave it at that today. And I hope that this episode has blessed you and taught you anything that you might need to know when it comes to your kids. I am no expert on parenting. I'm just a parent, and I've done this 3 times so far, and I do believe that I've done it successfully. Um, I'm still working on it, and if I have any new developments, I will be back here to let you know about it. Anyway, y'all, God bless, and don't forget that there is a God in heaven who loves you and is waiting for you to call him your Father. Run into the arms of Jesus. He loves you. All right, guys. Have a good one.